Hi, my name is Tina. I'm head of design of Victoria Designs. Thank you so much for purchasing our Book of Spells Crafting Printables kit. In this video, Kira will show you how to craft the journal, the ephemera holder and the gift box that she created with the printables. Kira has her own YouTube channel, Kira Pays, and she is passionate about art journaling and how it can help with mental health. Make sure to check it out, the link is below. And now I'm giving the word to Kira. Enjoy crafting.
Hi everyone, my name is Kira and I'm super excited to be here today. So I'm going to share with you how you can create this a gift box, a junk journal and an ephemera holder with the Book of Spells Crafting Printables kit. And I'm super excited to share this tutorial with you. So let's just start off with the junk journal. What I did in preparation for this is that I picked out the journal pages from the kit and I printed them double-sided on my computer. So for this journal I used paper that is 120 GSM because I think for me that is a better paper to use in a journal because it's a little bit thicker but not too thick to fold it. And this is usually my process on how I'm preparing my pages. So after I cut off all the excess paper, we are going to fold them in half to create the pages for the signatures, because we are going to make the signatures first. And this is just a matter of how you want to fold your pages. I did keep in mind which pages I want to have as my signature cover pages, but for the rest I'm just folding them in half. So now I'm figuring out exactly which ones I want to use as my cover pages, and I try to match the colors together with them because these papers will be showing next to each other. And now I'm just going to take the printable papers and I'm going to split them in half to create my signatures. So I do keep in mind that there are these beautiful full image pages and writing pages a little bit equally divided into two stacks because we are going to create two signatures. Now I also went through my stash because I like to add other papers as well, and I picked 2 of each paper so I can put them in both signatures, and these signatures will have 10 pages each, and I'm just going to fold them in half. Now with these papers, if the papers are smaller, you can put them in your junk journal, that's no problem at all, but if they are a little bit bigger, you need to cut them down. So I'm measuring out how big this page is, and this page will be 5/1/8 of an inch by 7/7/8 of an inch, which is 13 centimeters by 20 centimeters. And all I'm doing now is I'm cutting them to size so they will fit in my signature, because these are A4 sheets of paper and they are a little bit too big for these signatures. So I will do that with all the papers that I collected that are a little bit too big. And now it is time to assemble your signatures. So this is more of an intuitive process. I did keep in mind that I wanted to alternate between a regular piece of paper and a paper from the printables kit, and I look at the colors of the papers that I'm using. So I'm finding out where I want to have the blue or the cream color paper, but I'm alternating them. And this process you cannot do wrong because this is just how it feels for you and how it looks good to you. So just have fun with it and just go for it. I'm also going to do that for the second signature, but I'm making sure that I'm not using the same papers in the same way. So in the last signature, you saw that I used the light blue paper in the end, and now I'm using the light blue paper in the beginning because I do not want the signatures to be exact replicas from each other. I do want to have that little bit of variation, but also some cohesiveness in my paper choice. After I am done with this, I will check if I like where the journal is going. Do I feel it? Do I feel inspired by it to flip through it? And after that, I will make sure that I am going to bind my signatures together. First of all, I'm going to do that with some binder clips, because when you put signatures together, you will always have a little bit of overhang. And this is because of the paper that has its own thickness. So it doesn't matter if you cut everything exactly to size, you will always have this little bit of overhang. And I like to cut that off with a cutting knife and a cutting ruler. Now, I always, of course, clip everything together to make sure that nothing will move while cutting. And what I'm going to do here is take my cutting ruler and my cutting knife. So the trick with cutting this is to take it slow, don't put too much pressure, and just take your time while cutting, making sure that you put down your ruler very, very hard so it doesn't slip. And also take a sharp blade. And mine wasn't really sharp, so take a sharp blade. and take your time while cutting. If you do this too fast, you will get raggedy edges and it will not look nice, or it will get crooked. So please take your time for this. And I did this for both of my signatures. So now my signatures are pretty much done to be bound into a journal, but we do not have a cover yet. So we are going to create the cover right now. And what I used for that is this big cardboard box. This box will be in this entire video, and I just took it from an order that I ordered online. I'm going to use that box to recycle. And what I do is I will measure out all the individual pieces that I need. So for the journal cover, you need 2 pieces of 5/1/4 of an inch by 8 inches, which is 13.3 by 20.3 centimeters. It's about, you can do it a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, but keep in mind that you want to have your journal cover a little bit bigger than your signatures. That helps you to make sure that your signatures will be neatly inside your journal. I put down 3 marks on my cardboard because that helps me to draw a straight line. I'm not so good with drawing straight lines and a ruler, so this is a little trick that I learned, to always make 3 marks, and that will help you to create a straight line if you put your ruler against it. Now you need 1 piece that is 1 inch by 8 inches. This will be the spine, and that is 2.5 centimeters by 20.3 centimeters. Now all you're going to do is the same as I did with cutting out the cutting off the excess from the journal signatures. You are going to take your time and just use your cutting knife and your ruler to cut out these pieces. And as you can see, I go through this cardboard a couple of times to make sure that I cut it nicely and neatly and straight. And that is the biggest tip I can give you while creating your journal or anything with cardboard, to take your time and go over it a few times. Now I will prepare all of my pieces and I will just turn around my box and I will figure out what is the best place to do so. And I also, of course, always check if my journal fits inside. So when I have cut one panel, I will put it on top of my signatures to see if it is the correct size, because I did make some size mistakes in the past. So I always check that. Now we are going to create our cover, and I picked out 2 beautiful pattern papers from the kit. I found this one that says Book of Spells on the front, and I thought that would be a very, very cool front cover. I also have a back cover paper and a paper for the spine. But first of all, we will create our covers. The only thing I did is I cut off the excess white paper, and that's that. You just need the original size of how this was made, and we are going to stick our cardboard piece down onto this paper. So what I do, I just put some wet glue, because I prefer wet glue for this because it gives me a little bit of wiggle room when putting them down, and I'm eyeballing it to place it in the middle. I eyeball this, I do not measure anything of this, and if it's a little bit crooked, it doesn't really matter. It's still a beautiful journal, and I'm also going to do this for the back side. So I'm just putting some wet glue on the back piece, it doesn't really matter which side, and I'm going to stick that down on the paper in the middle, and I'm eyeballing this. That's all there is to it. And after this, we will complete our journal. So I will take a bone folder and I will burnish it down. That helps with binding the glue to the paper, and it will help spread the glue on under the paper. So that is what I like to do for both of the covers, to make sure that it's really, really stuck down. And now we are going to fold the edges in to create this very nice corner, or make sure that you do not see anything of the cardboard anymore. So what I do is I fold all the pieces at first in, and after that I will take my scissors and I will cut off some excess of the paper. So what I'm cutting off is in this triangular shape, but I do not cut it completely to the corner. So I cut up to the score line and then I change my direction, but make sure to leave a little bit of room for the corner, because the cardboard also has a thickness and you do not want to see these corners through your journal once it is complete. So I will do this for all 4 sides, and cutting the corners like this helps with the paper not bulking up in the corners. And then you will stick everything down. So in the order you are going to stick this down doesn't really matter. I like to do the long sides first and then the short sides. And I'm just taking another bit of wet glue and I'm putting some glue on the flap. And now I'm going to work my way from the middle, pushing it in, and I'm going to push the paper over the cardboard. That way you will have a very nice flush edge. I like to do it this way because it gives me a lot of control. And I'm going to do this for all these sides. So putting some glue on the flap, pushing it in from the middle, and making sure that it's flush to the side of the cardboard. And now your piece is glued down beautifully. I'm also going to do the same for the top and the bottom. Now, if there's a little bit of extra paper in the corners, you can still cut that off, but be careful. I rather take a little bit of extra time to put it in the corner and not cut it off, because it happened to me that I cut off a little bit too much and then you saw the cardboard of the journal. So that is something that I don't really do, but if there is a lot too much, you can of course still cut off a little bit of the corner. Doing the same for the top one, and this is how we are going to create the back cover and the front cover. I'm going to repeat this process for the back one, and after that we will continue our process on making this junk journal. So you have your front cover and back cover complete, and now I will take some paper to put on the inside. So this is also pattern paper from the Crafting Printables kit, and this inside paper is the same size as the signature, so it's 5/1/8 of an inch by 7/7/8 of an inch, 13 by 20 centimeters, and I'm going to cut that to size to make sure that you will not see the cardboard on the inside, of course, but you do still see a little bit of the outside cover peeking through on the inside. It's a look I very much enjoy, and it also really looks like how books are. But before I'm going to stick it down, I'm going to distress this with my scissors. So I'm going to distress the sides of both the scissors. Be careful with this because you do not want to cut in your hand, and also you don't want to rip the paper. So do this a little bit carefully. You do have distress tools, but I don't have it, so I use my scissors. And now I'm taking some distress oxide in gathered twigs to really get that vintagey kind of look. Gathered twigs is my favorite brown color, so that is my go-to for vintage looking journals. And after I did that, I will stick that down as well with some glue. Now, I don't fuss really about how I apply my glue. I just apply it and I stick it down. I don't really mind if something comes up. I will stick it down later on, but this is how I do it. And then I will take my bone folder again and burnish everything down to make sure that the bond is really, really well. So after we did that for both of the covers, we are going to work on to distress the covers as well. So here, if you have a little bit of a white corner, it doesn't really matter because you're going to use some distress oxide or some distress ink. It doesn't really matter. I prefer the distress oxides because they are a little bit more opaque. I really enjoy that product, but you can also, of course, use distress ink. Look what you have. And then after I did that, we are going to work with the spine. So with the spine, you have to make sure that you leave enough room for the journal to open and close. So what you need is the thickness of the cardboard in between the spine and your cover pieces. So that's what you saw me do. You can really measure that out with a piece of cardboard, but don't forget that the paper also has a thickness to them. So I usually eyeball this and I find a little gap in between that I think that suits. So now I'm going to take a piece of this pattern paper, which is 3 inches wide, and I just take the full length of the pattern paper because we are going to fold it in again. So it doesn't really matter how long it is, but I do take it as 3 inches wide, and that means that there's about 1 inch on the front cover and 1 inch on the back cover. And 1 inch was 2.5 centimeters. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that cardboard piece of the spine and I'm going to stick it down to that back piece of the pattern paper. Now I didn't really put it in the middle. You would do this in the middle, but if you do not if you're not exactly in the middle of the paper, it doesn't really matter. But do try to keep the sides of the paper equally, because that will be on the front cover of your journal. I'm also going to distress these sides with my scissors, the same way I did with the inside paper. I really enjoyed that look, and also the ink will grab on a lot better to that distressed paper than sometimes it does to pattern paper. So I very much enjoy having that little rough edge on my journals or my vintage projects. I'm using the same distress oxide, so you can use the same ink for your journal and everything else we are going to do. And now we are going to assemble the journal cover. So as you can see, I'm measuring out a little bit how much space I need. And you do need a pretty big gap, simply because the cardboard is pretty thick. And now I'm folding in those other pieces exactly the same way as I did with the journal covers, to make sure that everything will be nicely tucked in together. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to add some glue. And I'm going to add that to the piece of paper, and I'm leaving that little gap open so there's no glue in that little gap. So I'm not sure on how big this little gap is. Check your cardboard, because it really depends on how thick your cardboard is, on how big your gap needs to be. But a good trick to do is you use the thickness of the cardboard, put it in between there, and check if there's a big enough gap. So after I put them together, I will check, of course, if my journal will close, and it did. And I'm pushing everything down, making sure that everything is straight and that everything is lined up with each other. And now we are going to fold in the flaps of the spine paper. So this is exactly the same as I did with the journal covers. I'm folding it in from the middle, pushing it down so it's nice and flush with the outside of the journal. And we are going to do the same with the down under the journal. Now we are going to create the inside paper for the spine, and this piece will be 3 inches by 7/7/8 of an inch, which is 7.6 centimeters by 20.3 centimeters. So the length of the paper is the same as the backing papers we already put in, and this will be a perfect fit for the papers you already folded. Now I'm going to distress this as well. I do like it because you can also cover up some of your little mistakes or some not very nice cut edges. So this is also a very good trick if you want to smuggle a little bit. And now I'm using the same distress oxide again to also give that vintage look to this paper. And all we are going to do now is I'm going to stick it down as well. So I'm going to put some glue to the outside edges of this paper. And I'm also going to add some glue to the spine piece and also to the backing piece, because you can see how far the glue needs to go, because you already have these two pieces there. So don't put any glue over this. Don't put any glue in the open gaps, because you do need that to open and close your journal. Now all I did is put it down, and I'm going to burnish this as well. All you need to do now is leave your cover to dry for 24 hours, because you do not want to rip your paper because of the wetness of the glue. And then you will just put your scoring marks back into your journal and fold it into each other. So your journal cover is complete. The next step is to bind in the signatures, and this is can be a little bit tedious, but what I do is I take the width of my spine and I try to, in this case, divide it in thirds. So I'm about 1 centimeter and 2 centimeters apart. So I try to do that. It's the same for inches. Try to divide your spine piece in thirds. That way they will be nicely put together in your journal on an even place. Remember to draw on your spine, because later on in the video I will draw on the book cover part. So you have to be you have to check if you're drawing on the right place. I'm just putting the 3 marks and making a line. You will not see this line anymore. I do like to do it with pencil, but you will not see it anymore. So this is where I'm going to find the center point for my holes. And I take 2 centimeters from the top and 2 centimeters from the bottom, which is about 1 inch. And I drew that on the book cover instead of the spine. So I'm going back in to find my center point for my holes. I'm going to put in 3 holes, and I'm going to put it in the center point 2 centimeters from the top, 2 centimeters from the bottom, or 1 inch from the top and 1 inch from the bottom. It's not an exact science. This is a standard measurement I use for my journals because it's also a very easy measurement and it's also very, very easy binding. So the next step to do is to put the same measurements in your signature. Now remember, your cover is a little bit bigger. So remember that when you are doing this, that you need to have that little bit of extra overhang. You can measure this on how big you made your own overhang. I eyeball this usually because it is just the tiniest bit. But I do find the center point as well for my signature and use the same measurements. So 1 inch from the top and 1 inch from the bottom, or 2 centimeters from the top and 2 centimeters from the bottom, or in this case, a little bit more. But I move my ruler that I feel that I have the same center. You can also use your journal as a template and keep your signatures next to it to find if you have the correct spot for your holes. And all I'm going to do now is poke my holes. So this is the way that I like to do it. Be careful that you do not poke in your hands. If you have a better way to do this, do your own thing. But this is how I like to do it. I'm just going to poke my 3 holes in both of my signatures, and now I will take my journal cover and I'm going to find the places where I matched my lines. So remember, I drew 2 lines fully over the length, and then I found my middle point and 1 inch from the top and 1 inch from the bottom where the lines meet. There you need to make a hole. So I will do that, and that means that there are 6 holes in my journal cover right now. And now I'm going to take some embroidery thread. So this thread is a beautiful dark green thread, and what I like to do is I like to take 2.5 times or 3 times my journal length for my sewing in, and that way I always know that I have enough thread, and then I'm going to start in sewing. So this is a little fun thing. I am sewing in this signature, and this signature is actually upside down the wrong way in because, as you can see, you see the back cover right now up front, and I just left this in because it also happens to us who make the tutorials, or us who are content creators on YouTube. We also make mistakes, and it's no problem to make a mistake. It happens. We all have it, and I will share with you how I'm going to fix this problem because I actually sew it in completely, and I realize it. Luckily, I realize it on a nice time. But if this happens to you, don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. You can just take out your signature and start all over again. So I do everything nicely and neatly. I will take you through the process, of course. And I take off my binder clips and I close my journal. And this is where I noticed that it was upside down and on the wrong side. So I snip my thread and I take it out. And I'm going to realign my signature as best as I can. Put my binder clips back on so everything will stay nicely together. And after that, I will sew in my signature again. So you take 2 times the embroidery thread or 3 times the length of your journal. You start from the middle, and I like to start with the last signature first. Then you go through your journal and your signature. You go up and go both through your journal cover and your signature. So sometimes you have to fuss a little bit with this, but don't worry, I'm sure you will get it. As you can see, I also fuss a little bit with this because, yeah, that sometimes happens. Then you go completely down to the bottom hole and go through both, and then you will finish it off in the middle. Now make sure that your end threads are both on both sides of that middle thread, so you have a nice place to tie off a knot. As you can see, I have them on both sides, and now all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my paper tight, or my thread tight, but not too tight because I do not want to rip my paper, but I do want to have it nice in there, and I'm going to tie a double knot. Now my signature is sewn in, and I did the exact same thing for the second one. Now everything is inside my journal, and I am checking if everything is how I want it to be. So what I like to do next is I like to decorate my cover a little bit, and you can do this however you see fit, of course, but I saw some very cool embellishments in this kit that I wanted to use, and I also wanted to add a little bit of extra. Now I'm going to add this lace to my spine because I thought it would be fun if it would break it up a little bit and would have a different texture on there. But I'm going to change my mind. And I also left this in because it is okay to change your mind while you are creating. You don't have to follow the original plan. If there is something else you find that looks better with it, just take off what you already put on. I do that all the time because I am not one who can plan out everything before I create. So I changed my mind, as you can see, and I want to use this velvet black ribbon on the backside because I thought it looked a lot cooler with this theme and with this kit. So I'm figuring out on how I want to add that. In the end, I decided not to put it through to the inside. I'm just going to add that on the outside. But I want to show you here that I also try out things and experiment things while I'm creating, and that I do not have a set plan for everything. So don't worry if you do not envision your journal completely before starting. It's okay. You do not have to. So what I do here is I'm using some wet glue to stick down that ribbon, and I'm making sure to leave a little bit of extra ribbon on the sides because I'm going to cut that off later on. I am notoriously known for cutting papers or ribbons too short or too long, so I'm not even trying anymore to cut the exact same size. I will trim it once it is on my project and I know exactly what size I need. So I will do this for the front and back cover, and this is where I'm going to cut off that little excess. Try to not cut in your journal. That's the only thing that I can say, and it is okay if you do it like this. So I did it for all two sides. After that, I am taking this other ribbon and I am putting that under the binding. So this is something that I like to do because you can replace your ribbon. I've had journals where the ribbons broke, and this is a very nice way to replace your ribbon. I use a paper clip to put it through the binding, and all that is left for me to do now is to add a little ribbon or a little bow. And my journal is closed. I always like to add a closure, and this is a very, very easy one. Now I'm going to continue to decorate my front cover, and I love to go through that embellishments. I cut these out beforehand because there are a lot of beautiful sheets with embellishments, and I like to have them on hand ready for me to use. So I tend to fussy cut them before I start the project. I also found some beautiful words that I'm going to add here. And here you have a little sneak peek of the ephemera folder we are going to use, because I put a lot of these embellishments in this ephemera folder that you can gift to your friend or family or whoever you want to gift this journal to. I'm also using some distress oxide on all of the decoration pieces to really help with that vintage look, and also so you don't see any of the white edges of that paper. I print my embellishments on 160 GSM paper, so it's a little bit thicker. I like that because I also use these kits for snail mail or other projects, and I like to have a little bit of a sturdier paper with these little loose embellishments. But that also means that you might see a little bit of a white border, and that is why I like to use the distress ink or the distress oxide. Now, my journals are always pretty plain on the inside because that is how I like to have my journals. But I do always include a pocket on the front, and this kit has this beautiful pocket, so I didn't have to do anything, just fold it and I can glue it in. I also found another beautiful of the embellishment piece that I thought would look really cool in the beginning of the journal. So I'm going to distress the pocket as well, and I'm just going to stick that down with some glue. This is just some Nuvo Deluxe glue that I use, but you can use your own favorite glue. I'm going to stick that down in the corner of the journal, and then I will add that beautiful embellishment piece in the front. Like I said, I like my journals to be quite plain on the inside, and I do not want to decide for someone else where there are pockets or not. So what I tend to do when I'm going to gift something like this is that I am clipping in these very, very cool embellishments inside a journal because I love the look of it. I love the look of these beautiful finished journals where everything is ready. But for me, it doesn't work because I like to have the creative freedom in my journal. And I do not like it if a lot of pages are already set in stone. So if you have the same as I have, you can just clip them in with some paper clips and give it to your recipient, and they can decide on what they want to do. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to clip in pieces of the embellishments on pages that are just my own paper, that have no design on them, just a color, to make it look more fancy and more finished. And that these pieces were also too big for the ephemera holder, so it was perfect to add them in the journal. And I just use a gold colored paper clip and I slip these pieces in there. I always check if my journal is how I want it to be after I finished it, and if I'm happy, I'm going to close it up, and then your junk journal is finished and ready to go into the gift box. So now it is time to create the ephemera holder, and for this ephemera holder I used the journal pages that are narrow, that are also included in this kit, and you need 2 single-sided journal pages, and you are going to cut them out as I'm doing here, and you need 1 sheet that is printed double-sided. So you have 2 single-sided pieces of paper, and we are going to cut them in half, and then you have 1 sheet of double-sided printed paper with 2 of the journal pages. We are going to cut these in half because we are going to use them to mat our ephemera holder we are going to create with some craft colored cardstock. The other piece we are going to fold in half because we are going to bind this into our ephemera holder. Now I have an A4 sheet of craft cardstock here, and I'm going to score at 3 3/4 of an inch, 4 inches, 7 3/4 of an inch, and 7 7/8 of an inch, which is 9.5 centimeters, 10.2 centimeters, 19.7 centimeters, and 20 centimeters. Now, it was really fun because making this, I changed my plan a little bit, but the cardstock size will be eventually 6.5 inches by 10 7/8 of an inch, which is 16.5 by 27.6 centimeters. Now you're going to fold in all of your scoring lines, and you see that we have a little gusset and another little scoring line. Here's where I decided to change my plan, but follow the measurements and then you will have the exact same as I have and the exact same size as I have, because this is what we're going to use for the ephemera holder, and we are going to make 2 sides that you can flip in. As you can see, I'm measuring here what I did, and now I'm going to fold all of my scoring lines. So I have this small little gusset, and then I also have a little bit of a bigger gusset. You need this because you need a little bit of room in your ephemera holder to put in all the embellishments. If you would not do these little gussets, it will bulk up and create an alligator mouth. So these little gussets are needed, and they are also really fun. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to distress everything. So I'm distressing all the spine kind of gussets, and I'm also all the outside and the inside of this paper. I'm going to take my 4 pieces of single-sided paper that we created before, and I'm going to use some distress oxide to distress the edges, and I also used my scissors for all of the papers to distress the edges, and I really love that look. I also distressed the page we folded in half with distress ink, and I did it for all the sides and also on the folded part. Now we're going to assemble our ephemera holder, and what I'm going to do, I picked one of the pages as I wanted to have on my front cover. So this is a matter of taste. You can pick whatever page you like. There are tons of these beautiful journal pages that you do not have to use for a journal. You can also use them to create an ephemera holder. So this is one of the pages that I really wanted to have on the outside of the ephemera holder, because I thought it looked really fun, and I'm going to add them here. So I made sure that there was a little bit of room around these journal pages so you could see the craft cardstock. It is a look that I very much enjoy, and I eyeball this to put it down in the middle. This is why I love to use the wet glue, because I have a little bit of wiggle room while sticking it down. I feel with double-sided tape it feels very permanent, and if I stick something down crooked, I do not have any wiggle room to move it around. So that is why I love to use the wet glue for this as well. And I'm just looking if I have the right orientation for these narrow journal pages to be in this ephemera holder. I'm using my bone folder to burnish it down to make sure that everything is stuck down properly and that the glue spreads very nice and the bond is very good. And then we will move on. So the next step that I want to do is I want to see if my journal page fits in this ephemera holder. And here I am thinking, because I changed my plan during making this tutorial, so you see a little bit of thinking. I hope you don't mind, but yeah, I didn't figure this out beforehand. Sometimes it's really fun when you start creating a project and then all of a sudden you get this idea that would make it even cooler. Go for it, because you do not have to stick to the original plan. So I found another piece of pattern paper from the kit, and I'm going to stick this on the flap, as you can see. And the paper for this flap is 6 1/4 of an inch by 2 3/4 of an inch, which is 15.8 by 5.7 centimeters. And that will make sure that I have the same size also all around this piece of paper, so you can see that craft cardstock. I'm going to repeat the same process. I am using some wet glue. I am going to stick everything down, and I'm going to use my bone folder to make sure that the bond is really nice. After that is done, all of my sides are covered with paper, and now it is time to bind in my one sheet of paper. So it's the same here as with the junk journal. I try to find the center point and I try to find the middle point, and I'm taking the papers of the that I already put down as a reference of how big my other piece of paper is, and I'm trying to find the center point to find out where I need to poke my holes. I'm also going to do the same with that piece of paper. And as I said, I have these standard measurements, so this is the same as with the junk journal. You find the center point and you do 2 centimeters or 1 inch from the top and the bottom, and then you are going to poke your holes. As you can see here, I'm checking and double checking if I have the correct measurements. I use my piece of paper for that to see if I have it correct, and then I use my pokey tool to make small marks so I know where to poke my holes, because I didn't put the measurements exact. And this is a little tool so you can check if you have the correct measurements, so it will fit nicely into your cover. This is also why your cover is also always a little bit bigger than your journal. So if you put it a little bit more up or down, you will not see that your paper will hang out of your journal, or in this case, ephemera folder. I am using the same technique as I did before with the junk journal. So 3 times my thread, and then I start from the middle point, go all the way up, then go all the way down, and I come back in through the middle, making sure that these end threads are on both sides of this middle thread, so I can tie it off nicely. And that way we have bound in this single sheet in this ephemera holder. I'm going to cut off the excess thread. Do not cut it too close to your knot so it will not untie. And now our ephemera holder is pretty much ready to get some pockets. So I wanted to create an ephemera folder that has, or an ephemera holder that was mirrored to each other. So I am going to create 2 large pockets, and these pockets will be 7 1/4 of an inch by 2.5 inches, which is 8.4 centimeters by 5.7 centimeters. So that's what I'm going to do here. I picked these measurements because I always have a scoring line of 1/2 inch, which is my gluing flap, which is 1.3 centimeters. It's a measurement I think is very nice. It really helps me. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to score in a little bit 3 sides of these pockets, because I want to have 1 opening and 3 sides stuck down to my ephemera holder. So I'm scoring them at 1/2 inch, 1.3 centimeters, and I'm doing that for both because I'm going to mirror my ephemera holder. Now with these pockets, they are very simple and very easy to make. All you have to do now is to cut off the same way as you did with your journal cover, this little triangular piece, but this time you can cut up right until where the scoring lines meet into the corner, and this will help that the paper will not bulk up in the corners. I also distressed the edge a little bit of the opening, and now I'm going to fold in everything to create this very nice pocket. So this is a very easy pocket. You can make this in all different sizes that you want. You can make them square, you can make them rectangular, it doesn't really matter, but I find this a very nice standard measurement to have the 1/2 inch of scoring line, so I know that there's always enough space for me to glue down my project. I also used some distress oxide, of course, around all of this, and now these will fit in perfectly on the papers of the journal pages, and that is how I measured them. And I measured how I do this. I measure the place where I want to have it, and I add up 1 inch because I need 2 scoring lines. So I'm going to stick them down with some wet glue, as you saw me use before. And like I said, I'm going to mirror them. So I want to have pockets for bigger pieces, but I also want to have pockets for smaller pieces and even the tiniest pieces. So that's what we are going to create. We are going to move on to the next pocket, and I'm using 2 different pattern papers that were in the kit, and these will be pockets without any extra flaps. So you use the extra flaps if you want to have more bulky embellishments maybe in there, and these are more tighter pockets. So these pockets will be 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches, which is 6.3 by 8.9 centimeters. And I wanted to make sure that they would fit on the journal pages. So that is why you see me measuring here to see if I have the correct measurements. But they will be 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches. And I will cut both of these pattern papers exactly the same size, and we're going to stagger them on top of each other on these pages. And like I said before, we are going to mirror everything we do. So on this page we are going to use these pockets and pattern papers, and also on the page on the back next to the large pocket. So this is a matter of what you think looks good to you. I wanted to stagger them and wanted to create one larger pocket with a bigger opening, or for taller pieces, and one for smaller pieces. I'm just taking some glue and putting it on 3 sides of the paper, and sticking it down. As you can see, my paper is just a teeny tiny little bit too big. As I told you before, this happens to me all the time, and I rather cut it a little bit too big than too small. So if this happens to you, don't worry about it. It is a very, very easy fix we can do, because once you stuck everything down, you're just going to take your scissors, you're going to cut off that teeny tiny strip of paper, and then what you're going to do is distress it again, of course, and we are going to grab a little bit of that distress oxide, and no one will ever know that it was that teeny tiny bit too big. So on the back page, we are going to do the same. Put your glue on 3 sides of the paper. Figure out where you want to have it. I use my other pocket to see if my placement is right. And you're also going to do that for the bottom pocket. And go stick it down. So this is exactly the same process as I did before, and these papers are also the tiniest bit too large. So yeah, that happens, and that's no problem at all. You can always fix it, and with crafting in general, you can always fix your mistakes or cover it up, and that I think is the beauty of crafting. Now this kit also comes with the embellishment sheets, as I said before, and there are some wonderful pockets in there. So I decided to create in this centerpiece these 2 pockets, and they are a mirror image of each other, or kinda, but they are a little bit too big for the size that I'm using. So I am taking my pencil and I'm making a mark on where I want to cut them off. And I'm going to do that as well for the other side. So you can always alter your embellishments or alter your pockets to your needs or your size. You don't feel restricted by these things, because now I have 2 beautiful pockets that will fit into these this ephemera holder, and all I did was just a little bit of snipping. I'm going to snip off a little extra because I thought it was too close to the other one, and now I'm going to use some distress oxide to distress it more and make it look more cohesive and give it the vintage feel. Only thing that is left for me to do is to make sure that they are folded really nice, because these are also printed on 120 GSM paper, so they are a little bit more sturdy. And take my wet glue, and I'm going to stick them down exactly in the corners of this middle piece. So this will also give me a very nice place to add a lot of bigger embellishments or taller ones that maybe will not fit in the large pockets we already added. Now the last pockets we are going to make are from this beautiful pattern paper, and these are the pockets on the flips, and these will be for the tiniest bits that we can find in the kit. So these pockets will be 7/8 of an inch by 2 3/4 of an inch, which is 2.2 centimeters by 7 centimeters. And as you can see, that is how I'm going to stick them down. Now this pattern paper with the runes was exactly the right size, so I could just take a strip of the runes and make it my pocket. And you need 4 pieces of this, because we are going to add 2 to both sides of the flaps. And it's pretty much the same that we already did before. You are going to distress all the paper so you get rid of all the white edges, and you're going to take glue and put it on 3 sides of your paper and stick it down to your flap. And that is the tiniest pocket, so you can put in these tiny pieces and they will stay in there very, very nicely tucked away. I made sure to add them in about on the bottom and about middle point. You can add them however you want. You can even add more of these tiny pockets if you would like. You can add 4. I think you could fit 4 of them on this sheet properly. So that is also something you could do if you would enjoy that more. But then our thing is pretty much done, and here you see me coming with some lace. And if you saw what I did with the journal, I changed my mind. So at first I thought I wanted to use some lace, but it just didn't feel right. So I'm going to add this lace, and I left this in again for you to see that I, like I said, changed my mind. So I'm going to do the same as I did with the journal. I'm taking a paper clip and putting it under the binding, and I'm going to tie a bow to close this ephemera holder. Now my cardstock is a little bit sturdy, so it stays open for a little bit, but once I closed it, everything fits in perfectly, and with more time and more closing, it will stay better closed. Now I'm taking some pieces of the kit to create my decorate my cover a little bit. You do not need to do anything to these covers because they are beautiful on their own, but I like to add a little touch of my own, so that you have this beautiful ticket in there and then this label that says magical. I thought the color green would look perfect with the green that's already on this journal page, and I'm sticking that down to just give it a little bit more dimension. But I'm not going to do a lot of decorating with this because I'm going to stuff it with all the stuff that is in this kit. Now I'm going to cut apart these pieces, and these will fit perfectly in the small pockets we made on the flap. That is also why I loved making them. There are other words, and if something is a little bit too big, you go to another pocket and stick it in there. So I will show you a little bit of how I would fill this ephemera holder, but you can do whatever you want. You can add whatever you want, maybe include some washi tape. I'm a big washi tape fan, so that would also be very nice gift to give. But pretty much all the leftover embellishments of the kit go into this ephemera holder. I printed off everything, and pretty much all of it will go into this ephemera holder for the recipient to get, so they get all of the embellishments to use for themselves. And I have, of course, the beautiful journal, the box, and this ephemera holder. I decided to just decorate a little bit to give you some inspiration on how you could decorate these pockets. So what I like to do is I like to use pieces that overhang my pocket because it gives a lot of dimension and a lot of depth. If they are a little bit over the side of the pocket, I think it's a very, very fun look. And I also often like to create clusters of threes, so I will add something else to that pocket. Another thing that you can do is layer up pieces with each other to create more depth. So this will be on exactly in the middle of this pocket, but I will layer them up to create more of an in-depth look. I'm also just using my regular glue for this and sticking the pieces down, so I have these bigger pieces that are more neutral looking, and then I usually grab something that is more of a focal point or a word sticker. And in this case we have some amazing words in this Book of Spells kit, so I added one of those as well. And as you can see, my variation of pieces is also from a little bit bigger to small. I'm also going to add a word to this last little embellishments that I already made. I'm checking if I want to add anything else, but I am pretty happy. And I'm also going to add one of these strips to the other pocket, large pocket we made, because this is also always a very fun way to create something. Now you could also turn this into a belly band to create a little bit of an extra pocket. So then you only stick down the top and the bottom, and the middle will be completely open so you can move something in. That's not what I did for this one. I just put it down as a decorational strip. But that would be a fun extra little feature if you wanted to create more. You can do that as well on all the other pockets to create little belly bands and move something in there. I took one of these tickets to layer that up, to break up the pattern a little bit and to break up the density of this pocket and make it look a little bit more fun. And after that, I am checking how it looks and I'm pretty much happy. But then I decided to change out the ribbon, and I am going to, even though this ribbon is very, very nice, I'm going to add some black ribbon that will fit a lot better with my journal. And I think it really helps with the theme, because it is, of course, Book of Spells. It's about magic, it's about witchcraft and all these things. I think the black really finished it off instead of the lace. I thought the lace was a little bit too sweet. I don't know if that makes sense, but that is how it felt. And like I said, I do change my plan during creating, and don't ever let you stop you from changing your plan. It's the same when you follow this tutorial and you want to do something else because it suits you better. Please do so, because it is your project, and we are here to inspire you and not to tell you how you should do it. Now it is time to create the box where everything goes into, and we start off with the bottom of the box, and for that you need one piece of 8.5 by 6 inches, which is 21.5 by 15.2. That will be the bottom. Then you need two pieces of 8.5 by 2 inches, which is 21.5 by 5 centimeters. And then you also need two pieces of 6 by 2 inches, which is 15.2 centimeters by 5 centimeters. To create this box. After you have these pieces, you are going to create your box. And what I'm doing here is I'm lining up the side of the box with the long side of the bottom piece, and I'm sticking everything down with some masking tape, because we are going to cover up this whole box with pattern paper, and masking tape is just wonderful to keep everything in place. So what I'm doing is I'm lining up my piece of cardboard on the outside with the other piece of cardboard, put it down with some masking tape, and here you see me checking if the journal and the ephemera folder will fit into my box. I cannot pressure that enough to measure before you use all your beautiful supplies and try it out, because it happened to me so many times that I created something and it just didn't fit. Now for the pieces on the outside, everything will be on the outside of this bottom piece. You are going to add that 6-inch piece as well on the same way. So line it up as straight as you can and put a little bit of masking tape on top of it. Now the corners are still loose, so what we are going to do is we are going to add a little bit of this masking tape in the middle. You didn't need to have to do that. I did, because I want to have this nice way of lining everything up. But then you are going to put a little piece over the corner so everything will stay nicely together, because after this the paper will keep everything together. After you have completed your box, and you are going to check if your journal fits in, and if it does, we are going to cut out some pattern paper. So these are also pattern papers from the kit, and I printed out 5 pieces. I think I ended up using 3, but you're going to use the same pattern paper for all these sides. And I'm just cutting off the excess paper, and we are going to cut down the first paper now, which is the bottom. And the first paper is 9.5 inches by 7 inches, which is 24.1 centimeters by 17.8 centimeters. And we are going to score this on all 4 sides on 1/2 inch. And 1/2 inch is 1.3 centimeters. And we are going to do this because we do not want to see any edges of the box on the inside. So making these little flaps will make sure that you will not see anything. You're going to cut off the extra little squares. As you can see, they are on the outside. You do not need them. You need to cut them off for it to fit beautifully in your box. So you're going to do that for all 4 sides, and then this paper is ready to go into your box. Of course, after you folded your scoring lines, and you're going to fold them to the pattern paper, because the white part we are going to glue down into the box. Now the next papers will be, you need them 2 times. You need 2 times 2.5 inches by 7 inches, which is 6.35 by 17.8 centimeters. And you are going to score these on the short sides, 1/2 inch or 1.3 inches. These will be on the short sides of the box, and having this extra line that you will fold will make sure that you do not see the line of the cardboard box. You are also going to fold them on the inside, so you have this nice little gluing flap, and like I said, 1/2 inch is a standard size for me to use for this. And then all that is left to do is that you need 2 other pieces of 2.5 inch by 8.5 inches, which is 6.35 by 21.5 centimeters for the long parts. And you do not need to do anything extra to these pieces, because they will just go in the box. Now, if you prepared all of your pieces, you can start gluing everything down. I am going to put glue in the box because I think that is easiest, because you do not want to have all of this big gluey paper flipping around. So I'm going to add that in the box. But I do add glue to the sides of the paper because I think it's a lot harder to do that inside the box. But you can do this however you feel comfortable doing this. There is no technique behind gluing this down. Then I will put my piece of paper in, and as you can see, it will fit exactly inside. I use my bone folder to press everything down into the corners. I also turn my box and press everything down with the flaps. And then we are going to put in these short pieces, because the large pieces need to cover up that extra scoring part we made to make sure that you will not see the corners of the box. So I am going to add a little bit of glue on the piece of paper, and then I decide I want to put the glue inside the box. I also changed glue, not because of a specific reason, but I run out of the glue that I was using. So you can just use your own favorite glue for this. There's no specific glue that you need. But as you can see, I put down that short piece of paper. And there is a little bit of overhang on the top, and I did that on purpose, and I will share with you why I did that. But first we are going to add the other piece as well. So I put glue on the inside and a little bit on the long sides for the gluing flaps that I created, or the scoring lines, to make sure that everything will look nice. So I make sure that everything is flush with the bottom. I make sure that I burnish it down very well with my bone folder to make it sure that everything is nicely stuck into the corners and everything is just perfect. Now I'm going to add in the bigger pieces, and these are the easiest pieces to put in. I don't think it is hard to put these pieces in, but you do not have to think about this. Just put some glue, add your piece, and it should be exactly the same size as you already made your box, and just burnishing it down to make sure that everything is stuck down nicely. I'm also going to do that to the other one, and now you can see that we also covered up those scored pieces. So that is why you do these as last, because you don't want to see that folding line or where the paper ends on the inside of the box. And now you have a beautifully nice inside of this box. And what we are going to do next after everything is down is we are going to make sure that you do not see any of that cardboard. Now, I have to say that this is a pretty tricky thing to do. It was quite hard, so you did see a little bit of my cardboard, but I fixed that with some distress oxide. But to the reason why I made these extra flaps, and I'm going to cut in the scoring line of these papers, is because the cardboard has a thickness, and I wanted to fold this over like I did with the journal, and to make sure that you would not see that cardboard edge. I'm just cutting in the corners and I'm going to fold everything over. This is exactly like I did before, only this time we are doing it on the outside of the box instead of on a journal cover. And all we need to do now is take a little bit of glue and glue all the sides down. As you can see, I didn't cut it properly, but I will put everything down with some glue. I also didn't feel the need to cut off the extra pieces. I just glued down everything, even these little squares. So I'm putting some glue on them and pushing them down, making sure that they are flush with the box. And then I will add some glue to the flap, and I will push that down as well, starting from the middle like I did with the journal cover, and pushing it down, making sure that everything is flush with the side of the box. And this is what I'm going to do for all 4 sides. So put it on your flap, and it doesn't matter in which order you do this. Just take your time with it and make sure that everything is put down nicely and neatly with some glue. And as you can see, you will see a little bit of the corners of the box. I will fix that. You can fix that with some piece of pattern paper, but I will fix it with some distress oxide later on. Now everything is stuck down on the inside. Of course, we also need outside papers. So I picked another pattern paper from the kit and I also printed that off, I think 5 times, but I only needed 3. And we are going to cut these papers to the same size as we did for the inside of the box. So this paper is also 9.5 by 7 inches, but we are not going to score this one. We are going to adhere this one directly to the box because you have the thickness of the cardboard, as you can see here, and it's very tricky if you want to measure this, and it's not very exact. So I like to put this on my box first, and I'm going to add some glue, eyeball the center to put my piece of paper in the center of the box, take my bone folder, and now I'm going to do the same as I did with the journal or already on the inside. I'm going to fold the edges to see where my lines will meet, but also to help the paper already to fold over in this position. And that way I will have the exact same look as I do with scoring, but I know it will be exact. I'm going to cut off the corners as well. I don't know what I was thinking with this first one. I took off the corner that way, and I wasn't supposed to do that. So I will show you how you can fix that if it happens to you. You do not need to cut off the corners. You need to cut it on one side. So I cut it on the large side on one place on the scoring line. Now I made this mistake. So I am going to first of all stick down this piece, and as you see, you have these little triangles, right? We also had on the inside. Pop them over so you do not see the edge of the box, and I'm doing the exact same thing I already did before. Push it in, making sure that it is flush with the edge, checking if everything looks all right, and then I will fix my little my little mistake. So I take a little piece of scrap of that pattern paper and I'm just going to glue that flush with the bottom of the paper. So it is exactly together with the bottom of the paper. I'm trying to show you here, but my camera had a little bit of trouble picking this up, but it's lined up with the bottom of the paper. And now I fixed my little mistake, and no one will ever know except you that I made that mistake. I'm going to do the same here, folding in that corner, folding it over to the other piece so you will not see the corner of the cardboard. And then I'm going to also put glues on the large flaps of the box and fold them over. Now we are going to cut the last pieces of paper we have for the outside, and these are 2 times 8.5 by 2 inches, which is 21.5 by 5 centimeter, and 2 times 7 by 2 inches, which is 17.8 by 5 centimeters. And you need those. I do make a mistake with these first ones, so don't mind the measurements that I write down on the paper. But you do need the same as with the inside. We are going to use the short sides to fold over to the long sides of the box, and we do not score these because of the same reason why I said before. As you can see here, I'm taking one of the short sides because I'm going to adhere them down first, and I'm just going to directly adhere them. So I make sure that you see a little bit of the top box of the paper from the inside. But here you see that I noticed my little thing that you see the cardboard. So I take my distress oxide and I'm going to fix that with my distress oxide. You can take pen and paper and fix that, but I use distress oxide. Now I'm going to glue that down, and I'm trying to focus my camera so you can see what I'm actually doing. So I am putting glue on that longer side, eyeballing if I can put this paper a little bit in the center so it doesn't come as exact, but you do need enough space on the sides to wrap it around the corner of the box. And then I will add a little bit of glue on these flaps to wrap it around, and I'm going to do that the same way as I did before and push it over to the other side so it's nicely tucked in with or wrapped around the corner. And this is what I'm going to do for both sides of the box. So I will show you again what I did, but first I'm going to work with my distress oxide a little bit if that would fix what I was doing. And I thought it looked good, so I went to the next part of this box, which was the other side. So I'm going to do exactly the same, lining it up, and I am making sure that I have a little flap on both sides to wrap around the corner, and I'm going to put some glue on the flaps to fold it over, and that way I have a nicely tucked away corner and you don't see any of the box. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to distress every edge of this box to see if I like the look, and I did. So now I'm going to add the final panels on the outside, which are the bigger pieces, and then I will find out my mistake because I cut it too long. I should have left off 1 inch. So what I'm going to do now is I notice, I take it off, I go back to my trim and scoreboard, and I cut off that 1 inch because this paper needed to be 8.5 inches and not 9.5. So I'm going to do that for both now, correcting my mistake. And I love to leave these things in because I also make mistakes, and it's so normal to make mistakes. No one is a perfect crafter, and even when you make tutorials you also make mistakes, and I think that is a very important thing to share because it can look like we all know exactly what we are doing all the time, but that is just not true. We also make these silly mistakes. Now our box is done and we are going to distress everything of this box. I'm going to distress all the corners on the outside. I'm going to put on a pretty thick layer of distress oxide. I really like this ink because you can see the oxidation, and that just makes me really, really happy. So I'm heavily distressing. After I was done with the distressing, it was time to create the lid of the box. And the lid of the box is 6.5 inch by 9 inch. And that is 16.5 centimeters by 22.8 centimeters. And we also need two pieces of 3/4 of an inch by 6.5 inches, which is 1.9 centimeters and 16.5 centimeters, and two pieces of 3/4 of an inch by 9 inches, which is 1.9 centimeters by 22.8 centimeters. And we are going to do exactly the same as we did with the big box, only with a smaller size or with a different size. So we're also going to cut this paper to size. And this paper is 10 inches by 7.5 inch. We are going to score it on 4 sides on 1/2 inch, which is in centimeters, 25.4 by 19.1, and the scoring line is 1.3 centimeters. So this is exactly the same as we did with the box. You are going to do the exact same technique. Then you also need two papers that are 1/4 of an inch by 9 inches, which is 3.2 centimeters by 22.8 centimeters for the inside flap. And then you also need two pieces of 1/4 of an inch by 7.5 inches, which is 3.2 centimeters by 19.1 centimeters for the sides. So you start off again with the bottom paper as we did with the big box, which you can see me do here. Then you are going to put in the smaller pieces, and I left this in so you can see more clearly how I'm putting my glue and how I'm putting down my paper, because this box is a little bit smaller, or this lid, and I'm folding over the edges again, adding some glue to that to make sure that everything is nicely stuck down, burnishing it down, and really making sure that everything is down in the corner. Then we also have, of course, again, that extra piece on top. So you're going to cut it in the corners, and after you've done that, you're going to fold it over again to the outside of the lid to make sure that you don't see that edge, and you're going to put everything back down again with glue the same way as we did before with the bottom part of this box. After that is done, we are going to check if our box fits in. Now the lid is a little bit wider, so you can make it a little bit smaller if you would like, but I didn't want to take the risk to, you also have to keep in mind the thickness of the paper that you are using. Maybe you are using more embellishments or thicker papers for the box, so this fits perfectly. And now we are going to cut the other papers. So for the top part of the lid, I am using the same pattern paper just as a whole. And the last papers you are going to cut are 3/4 of an inch by 7.5 inches, which is 1.9 by 19.1 centimeters. You need that 2 times, and you need 2 times 3/4 of an inch by 9 inches, which is 1.9 by 22.8 centimeters. And you do not need to score any of these because we are going to do the outside of the box as we did before. So you have the shorter pieces you are going to fold over the edge to create a nice corner so you don't see any of the box, and then you have these pieces that are exactly the same size as the long side of the box. And I use this beautiful green pattern paper to cover up the lid because I thought that these two would look amazing together. So you are going to repeat the same process, and I show you here again how to do this so you can see that you do exactly the same with the lid. Also, I'm going to share that I did not make the same mistake again, and that's also why I'm sharing that again and sharing how to create this lid, because as you maybe remember, I made a mistake while cutting these corners. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to fold over these papers, and then you have these squares that turn on the outside of the folded papers. And what you need to do is to cut them on the long side on the scoring line. So you have these two squares you can fold over to the short side of the lid. And here I'm going to show you, you're going to cut there on the scoring line or on the folding line, and you turn your box around and do that on the same side. So you should also do this with the box, and then you can stick everything together, folding your little flaps over. Now all that is left to do is to cover the outsides of the box, and we are doing exactly the same thing, or outside of the lid. You are going to take these short pieces of paper, put glue on your box and put glue on the flaps that are hanging over to fold them over to the corners. And then you are going to add the long pieces to finish everything off. Now your lid is completed, and you're going to take your distress oxide or your distress ink, and you are going to heavily distress all the edges and corners again of your box, and that will give just a fantastic finished look. After you are done distressing your box, you are ready, and it fits perfectly. As you can see, there's a little bit of room extra, so you could make the lid a little bit smaller, but everything fits into this box. I grab a little bit of twine to close the box and make it a true gift box. I will also add a few embellishments to the front of the box to make it a little bit more my own, but you can do whatever you like, of course. You do not need to do anything like that. You can just leave it as is, or maybe even add more than I did. Now, this is the end result. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I had a lot of fun making this for you, and I will leave you here with a flip through of the journal and the ephemera holder so you can see the end result of what we made. Thank you all so much for watching, and have fun crafting. Bye!